In this video I want to go over the Cinecamera rig, which at the moment is just that actor in the scene. I do have another mesh where that's the model that we are pivoting around and photographing using the rig, but just to introduce you to what's going on with this Cinecamera actor rig. I'm just going to make that preview a little bit smaller, coming to the adjust settings and reducing the preview size. Okay, so let's have a look at this actor. So if we click into here, we'll just look at the components on the left hand side first of all. So what do we have? We have the pivot point, which is the parent to the Cinecamera actor, which is then the parent to a light anchor, which is just a scene component that I've named light anchor. I've got two rect lights. I've got two rect lights that are children of that light anchor. That will make sense in a moment. And then I've got a texture location named scene component and a plane. So that kind of forms all the component parts of that actor. Now, looking at some of the functionality, you'll note that I've got some headers here: camera, angles, lights, and texture. Now, these are all variables that I have exposed in that actor. And then I have put them into these subcategories. So because they're exposed and they are then given a new category just by typing one in here and allocating the relevant variables to that, you just add another one in, you just type in and then it creates a new one. When you come back out to here, you've then got your exposed variables organized by category. So let's have a look at what some of these variables do. So we have a Cinecamera distance from origin. So at the moment the origin is 0, 0, 0. So any mesh that I put in to be photographed, I just make sure it's in that position. Let's actually keep that on. But then I've got a few options in here. I've got Cinecamera distance from origin, so I can actually move that closer to the object. What I've also got is the focus of the camera, so I can focus in and out. And this is just a prototype, but this just is a way of me showing you how I put this together, and hopefully some of that's of use. Now, the screenshot resolution multiplier, that in effect just multiplies the screen resolution. So if it's HD, 1920 by 1080, if I put that to 2, it will double up on that. If I put it up to 3, it'll be 3 times that size. So that's something that will be clear when we look at the blueprints. That's actually a bit of a hangover from, I don't know why that's exposed. I've not exposed that. Interesting. We'll look at that in a moment. It's obviously allocated to that camera setting. It's been brought in there. Angles, there won't be any visual change here in the viewport, but these are the steps that I am changing the rostrum camera as it moves round. So in the Z rotation, which is the rotation around a vertical axis, I'm asking it to move round in increments of 22 degrees. And then from horizontal to vertical, it's just how I've named it, H to V, degree steps, I'm saying on each move 4 degrees. And then I'm saying, actually, that the way that it's working at the moment, I have to put that in as a negative value. I could just multiply that by -1 to make it all positive values, but that's just a little foible for now. And then I'm saying keep adding, or in this case, deleting 4 degrees until you get to -45 degrees, at which point just quit and stop taking screen grabs. So that's just how I set it up. And then I do have a checkbox here which just switches between the 4 degrees, whether it's using the roll or the pitch. It just gives a slightly different effect in the screen grabs that it takes. In the lights, I have got kind of a classic rostrum setup, but what I have here is the control of being able to move the lights back and forth. I can move them out, and I can increase their intensity. So you can see now on the shoe, it's being lit a bit more. And of course, I can do all sorts of things. I can add individual controls for left and right. I could add some 2 more lights that are behind to give this object a clip light, which I might do at some point. This is just very much in its infancy. I'm just going to make that go into focus. 22 on the f-stop. But you can see that I've got control over how the light is affecting that object. And then the third thing, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth thing that I've added control over is this texture. So that can be moved independently. I can add a color to it and increase the emissive value of that color so it can glow if I want it to glow. So just trying a few things out just to see how all this comes together as a product. At the moment, I've got all these controls set up as exposed variables that are part of the Cinecamera rig when I have it selected in the world outliner. But I might have a little play around with creating an editor utility widget, so I can actually have a separate tab and give control over this camera rig. So I'm gonna try that because I haven't done that yet. Where I might then add some extra functionality where I can add different colors to each of the rect lights. I could change the scale of them individually and give a real sense of control over each of the component parts as you would in a studio. So we'll see how that goes. I have then, outside of that actor, we have the object, which is our kind of still life object, in this case a trainer, but it could be other bit of packaging, or it could just be something graphic or a piece of typography or whatever. I have created a separate sphere, which I've got an animated material on that at the moment, and let's just have a look at that now. I've literally just put a sphere in there, again just playing around and seeing what the effect is. But if I make that material two-sided, because we're inside the sphere, we now get an effect on our rig. So we had the particles, we have the shoe itself, so just having a play. But let's have a look at the blueprint now of that actor. So originally I set this up as an actor blueprint, and then I realized actually I wanted it to be a pawn. And one thing that you can do, so now in the top right hand corner you can see that I've got the parent class pawn. That did say actor, but what you can do is you can reparent any blueprint. So I clicked reparent blueprint and then selected pawn, and what that then does is it gives you some of the other pawn related functionality. So I have got that should be set to player 0 in terms of auto possess, so that when I start that level, it's that camera that gets possessed. And because we're using the screen grab functionality, it needs to have the camera designated to be able to do that with the right camera that you want selected. So looking in our blueprint, you'll note that I do have a few bits set up in the construction script, and the reason that I've got them set up here is so that when I'm making any edits here in our details panel, I'm getting some feedback immediately. I'm not having to press play. It's all being triggered as part of the construction. So what have I got going on here? So a couple of things. The texture emissive and the texture color I have got set up as a material parameter collection that links through to those materials. So in there I've just got a single scalar parameter for emissive, and I've got a vector parameter for color overlay. Those are then being called into those materials. So if I come out to the camera rig and then come to the plane, we can see that my logo fade material is using that emissive, the scalar that's multiplying the emissive amount, and then I am editing that color and applying that to the emissive color and the base color. So by having those set up as material parameter collections, in here I'm setting those, and because it's part of the construction script and those two variables are exposed, when I am updating them here, it's updating the material parameter collection, which is updating the material, and I'm getting real-time feedback on changing those variables. So that's those two. I'm then playing around with the world scale of the light anchor scene component, which is the parent of those two rect lights. So although I am using world scale on the scene component that's the parent, what that is actually doing is having an effect. I'm going to turn that sphere off. It's having an effect on the position of the lights. So at the moment I've set that rotation of those lights. I could of course add in another exposed parameter that is here where I could pivot those lights individually and change the angle of them facing the object. At the moment I've not done that. That may come in a future development. So I'm just sort of seeing what other bits of functionality would be useful for this project. Coming back here, I'm then affecting the light intensity for both. Again, that's kind of a universal setting for both. I would, for more granular control, set that up so that however many lights I've got set up in the rig, I can have individual intensity controls. But for the moment, I've just set that so that that gets mirrored. I've then got the camera aperture, which is just dealing with the focus at the moment in terms of the f-stop. Again, I can add some more controls that get pulled through from the Cinecamera actor into the editor utility widget when I develop that. And then we have got our Cinecamera dragged out, and then this parameter which just controls the camera distance from origin. Again, exposed, so when I'm changing it in editor, that's updating in real time. Similarly, the texture location, which is independent, can be moved. So that's all I've got in the construction script, but that gives me control in editor and updates in real time. Coming to the event graph, hopefully that's all still in fairly good shape. I think I did a bit of a spring clean. A couple of bits here, you know, I could make that into a function because it's pretty much duplicating the same thing. There's a slight difference here. I'll go into that in a moment. Getting ahead of myself. So on begin play, I'm just getting actor of class for the camera actor, which was being spawned as part of the template, and I'm just destroying that because I had two cameras, so that was tripping me up. When I pressed play, I wasn't getting my camera selected in the pawn. That may be redundant now because I've made sure that I've got auto possess on. Anyway, I'll leave that in for now. This execute console command r.temporalaa. upsampling to 0, this just helps make sure that you get a clean depth of field without any kind of weird artifacts. So that's a super powerful bit of console command, and it just feels a bit more real in terms of the when the camera goes out of focus. I've then got two things coming off this sequence. So this, again, this may now be redundant. I was having a problem. This also relates to the camera. I was just making sure that I was setting that camera distance that I was trying to establish here, because I was running into trouble. Let me disconnect that for the moment. Out of interest, let me see if I've now fixed that. That's fixed now, so I don't actually need that one. Good, so we can get rid of that. And then in theory, get rid of that. Okay. So the way that I've set up the camera moving around the pivot point is I've actually used a timeline with an event track. Badly named, so let's deal with that. Pivot step. All I've done is got a length of 1. I've got an event track here, and I've just added a keyframe after a second. The reason I've just given myself a second is because I'm not sure that the image gets written asynchronously, so I just wanted to make sure there was a second between each screen grab, so I wasn't tripping myself up. But so that pivot step gets called every second. I've got it on loop, but then I've just given myself a get out clause. So I'm saying that the return value of roll, which makes sense in a moment, I'm setting a bail angle so that I've got control. So if it's false, it will bail. If it's true, it will continue to the next section. So the next section is almost identical. I've just got a Boolean, which is this: am I using roll or pitch? Am I using that step increment in the X or the Y rotation, just to give me some variation. So let's just look at one of these. I'm also printing to screen, so I can just get a sense of progress. That isn't affecting screen grab, but it just gives me an update as to what's going on. So I'm taking the pivot, which is our kind of anchor for everything, and we're all everything is parented to that. And I'm getting the world rotation, and then the exposed variable for our degree step, I am adding to that value, that current world rotation. And then I'm setting the addition of that to the return value, and then putting that into the roll. So every time the timeline loops, the total is added. It's adding to the previous total because that action gets called every second, and it's being monitored here to see if we are still within the bail threshold. So that action keeps getting triggered until that condition is true, and then it stops. At the end of all that, each time that that camera has moved, I'm executing another console command, which is high res shot, and then we exposed the variable in terms of the multiplier. So coming back out to here, the multiplier, if that was 1, it would be 1920 by 1080. If that was 2, it would be twice that. So if I've got that set as 2, and I come back to our rig, that then is the end of that piece of code. So what I'll do is I'll share the download link for this rig at the moment. It's very much in progress, but you can have a play around with it anyway in its current form. So looking in the saved and screenshots folder, these are some earlier ones that I've not deleted, just playing around with what variations we're getting. And if I roll over that, yeah, there we are. So 3,840 by 2160. So that's the high screenshot 2 doubling up on the multiplier. And these are just different proportions because I've got a super wide monitor, so ignore those. So you can see that I've been playing around with the settings and just seeing what happens. And so hopefully that's of use. If these videos are giving you some value, then please do like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. So thank you for your support.
Live long and prosper.